Hi, this week there's a cyclone in the shed. So this week we're going to build a cyclone to go underneath the vacuum cleaner. There's a couple of reasons for this. First is to keep the dust out of the filter on the vacuum as far as possible. The less dust that gets up there, the more efficient the vacuum is and the cheaper it is to run it in the long term, because the filters are quite expensive to buy anyway. And the other thing is that the vacuum itself becomes far less efficient as it stood, because as the bin filled up underneath it, the dust starts spiralling around inside, and that in itself helps clog the filter up, and you can't see when it's full and it just becomes a mess. The ones we have at many sheds just get full up to right up to the top almost before anybody notices they're full. So I'm intending to build a cyclone. I don't know how well it will work, or indeed if it will work. All the signs are it should do, because everybody else seems to have managed to have done it successfully. Morning. Well, today I'm still trying to sort out the design of the whole of the extractor system, but I've actually now had a couple of hours just thinking it through and trying to place things. Really what it amounts to is that I'm trying to bodge together a series of parts that aren't meant to go together and have a certain amount of compromise involved. But I want to take the top off the damaged record power unit that I've got. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a brand new, unused, with a new filter. The very top level, if you like. And then below that is the actual baffle itself, which is basically a circle that the dust comes in, it goes around, and as it goes around, gravity drops and pulls it downwards, and there's a small groove cut in the perimeter of the disc that the baffle is, and it drops down into the drum underneath. If you look up aThien baffle on the internet, on YouTube, you'll find lots of examples of it. And obviously the air is being pulled out of that, and fresh, well, dust extract is coming in. Having cut the main groove for the polycarbonate, I've now got to cut right through for the groove that the dust drops down. The idea is that it comes in through this pathway here, and then after a point which is 120 degrees from that entrance point there is a slot about 35 millimeters wide. It goes all the way around, right the way up to that point where the air comes in. And the principle is that it comes, because there's a lot of suction going up that way from the vacuum, pulls the air in that way. Centrifugal force drives all the particles out to the outside edge, and by about that point gravity also starts to act on them and pulls them down, and then they'll fall through the slot. Any that it doesn't get pulled through by that point basically just carries on spinning until it does. Now, I know it's not as efficient as a cyclone, but as I mentioned before, the height of a cyclone is, for this sort of sized vacuum, is going to be best part of a metre, whereas this is going to be about 200-250 mil. So I've marked the line. Time to try out one of the cheap Aldi Forstner bits that I bought the other week. I don't know whether they're any good or not, but this is probably as good a time to find out as ever. Fortuitously, I've put a 35mm groove for the dust to go down, and this is 35mm Forstner bit, so we'll see how that works. Put that in place, centre line. Now, having got the trial fitted the polycarbonate into the grooves, I've just got to sort out this transition corner there. What I'm going to do, I've just taken a piece of timber that's roughly the right size. I'll measure the height that it needs to be between the two surfaces, and then I've just put a mark on the bottom. There's a rebate got to come out there to take the polycarbonate coming in that way, so that it'll just sit against it, and another small rebate there just to take it on the end of that groove there, and then round over that corner so that any air coming in and going round will get a decent smooth flow around that curve. Right, now I've run a route around the inside of the slot in the baffle from both sides just to try and smooth the airflow a bit. It's not perfect because plywood is tending to break up, it's quite thin in that point. And it didn't help that the little Aldi router let go of its collar halfway round and made a bit of a mess of it as well. But the whole thing is fairly smooth now, so there shouldn't be any ledges for dust to gather. I've marked out 8 support positions. What I'm going to do now is I've got them mounted back to back so that when you mount them face to face it'll all coincide. I'm just going to drill some very small holes where each of the pegs are going to go, and then I will screw and glue them onto one half, fit the polycarbonate, and then just screw them on the other side. I'm a bit bothered about screwing into such small pieces of timber, but we'll see how that goes. It's not really there other than retaining it because there's not a lot of tension on it, and I might then just put a couple of big supports in either corner just to hold the whole thing together. The only thing I would say, if you were doing this again, or if I were doing this again, or if anyone was copying a similar sort of system, it would probably be better to use MDF for your base of the baffle itself, or the top and the base, because it will router much better than plywood that's tending to break up. But other than that, we'll get crack on with that now and see how we go. Well, that's proved a lot easier than I thought it would. Main baffle is done. I've just got to reroute some support timber to go on the inside angle where the exit is, and that will go in there and give a smooth exit, and then it's just a matter of putting a couple of small pieces in and mounting the outlet, which will need to be packed out slightly, but we'll go in there. Right, that's the vacuum cyclone itself finished. I've probably slightly overcomplicated it by wrapping the outlet to the main dust collection system wrapped around the back. It used to come out more or less straight out from the back, but to make it more compact and make it fit, I've wrapped it around and put a 5-inch adapter on there that I've just got to put a 5 to 4 inch, and that will just plug into the wall, I hope. I've siliconed all the way around all of the perimeters to the polycarbonate. I did test it the other day and it worked even with air sucking in all around all of the openings and voids. At the moment there's air can get in all the way around the edges. The nozzle isn't particularly well secured, there's a lot of air gaps in there, so it's not sucking as hard as it should do, but it's more to establish the principle than anything. So let's see if it actually does anything. There's nothing significant in the top box. And that's the tray underneath. You can see the swirl pattern that's developed on it, and it's taken most of the dust and put it in the what will effectively be that's the size that the bin will be underneath it. The only thing I've got to establish is the depth of the tube which goes down inside the cyclone itself, which is the extract up to the vacuum cleaner. That is not long enough, I don't believe. I think it needs to be about at least halfway down into the cyclone itself, and that's only going down about an inch. So I need some 4-inch pipe just to extend that down in there. But other than that, that's now ready to go. The vacuum's been fully sealed up as well, so I can put the two together and then just move on to the last part, which is the cart underneath that will sit underneath the cyclone, where everything will drop down into it, hopefully all of the bits, and that should reduce the amount of muck getting into the vacuum. We will see. Now, it was only when I'd actually started to build the cart that I realised the fundamental mistake I'd made, and it just shows why you shouldn't change projects halfway through without thinking it really thoroughly through, because the outlet was fouling the rear member of the cart itself when I actually started to mount it into the cart. So I've had to take all the previous bit of back duct out and redesign it using one of the other outlet types, and just re-silicon this into position, and then that gives me an outlet right in the middle of the cart at the back, which is a slightly more elegant solution, but it's something that I just should have foreseen earlier. Then finally I just put a couple of lengths of the tape I'd put on the joints of the shed when I was building it. It's a double-sided tape that will seal the vacuum to the actual baffle itself, although it's easy to separate if I need to for access or repairs. It'll just make sure there's an airtight seal on the whole assembly, and that's the finished thing in its cart. Well, I hope you found that interesting. That has now got us to the stage where we have a vacuum and we have a means of dropping most of the filtered particles out underneath it. Next week will be some sort of a bin to hold it all, and a cart on which to contain the whole thing and screw it all together. So that's coming up next week. If you like the video, please press like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.